This is Julian speaking, welcoming you to another video out of the breach. Phase 2 of the event started and we got the second part of Eric's story. You can find the updated PDF in the download section of the Moonstone homepage. Read the story for yourself, or just listen to it here on the channel. So, grab a drink of your choosing, sit back, and enjoy another story out of the lands of Tauber. Part 2. The First Task. After 5 days of meandering, Old Caldus and Eric emerged on the path from the Weirdwood and wandered towards the estate gates. On their journey from the Poppycock Mansion near Sunrise City, they had taken advantage of the space to train, talk about soldiering, and get to know each other better. For the past hour, they had been sharing jokes, and Eric's cheeks were sore from smiling. Caldus could barely contain his wheezing laugh as he said, "That's not a goblin, it's me, son!" Eric snorted and laughed heartily, rubbing tears from his eyes with the heel of his hand. "Afternoon, Rick. I was wondering where you'd been." Herbert Growbottom fluttered down from a tree onto the path in front of them. "Herb!" Eric grinned and embraced his friend. "It's so good to see you. It's been, 3 months since the tower?" Herbert nodded. "And then a week of putting up with your ugly mug." Eric laughed and pushed his friend away. "And your incessant chattering." Herbert examined his friend. "Being back home agrees with you, Rick. Do you actually have some muscle?" Caldus laughed and ran the back of his hand on Eric's cheek. "Aye, he does, and look at this here stubble." Eric waved him away, laughing, his cheeks tinged pink. "Looks like I'll have more competition with the ladies now, eh?" Herbert winked, causing Eric to blush further. Caldus held out his hand. "I assume you're Herbert then. Eric told me about your adventures. I'm Old Caldus, but you can call me Caldus." Herbert took the man's forearm. "I'm Herbert, and you can call me Herbert." Chuckling, the 3 men strolled towards the gates, feet crunching on gravel. "It's nice to see you, Herb, but why are you here? I'm surprised to see you at the Baron's home." Caldus nodded. "I never thought I'd seen a goblin? Fairy? I like Phelan myself, as I'm the best of both worlds." "A Phelan here, given the Baron's feelings about both races?" "It seems the eclipse and its fallout did the factions some favors, even if the truce is unsteady. In any case, Queen Diana and King Cuthbert have been working together on a special gift for the celebration of the Accord's Grand Ball." "Isn't that 2 months away?" Eric muttered. "Yes, but it's a very special gift. They're trying to make golden eggs." Caldus scratched his head. Why is that?" "Something about a symbol of the sun. Anyway, the dog that lays the eggs..." "Dog? Why a duck?" Caldus snickered. Herbert looked at the 2 men with wide eyes. "Why a duck, Herb?" Eric grinned, intrigued by his friend's silence. Religious reasons. Anyway, the duck has been snatched by a giant or something, and I've come here to ask for assistance." Of course, I'd be happy to help our Dominion associates. The Baron smiled and leaned back in his chair. Herbert nodded graciously. Thank you, Baron von Fancyhat. You are most kind. The King and Queen thought that perhaps Eric would be a good choice to complete this mission. Me? How exciting, Eric thought, chewing his lip. He tried to keep the excitement from his expression. The Baron scowled at Herbert and rested his chin on his fist. Did they? Yes? Herbert looked confused. The Baron examined Herbert for a long moment. His eyes narrowed. What's that about? Eric wondered. Eventually the Baron nodded. Fine. Eric, please assist in this matter. Yes, sir. Eric gave a small bow to hide the broad grin that spread across his face. When Eric straightened, the Baron was staring at him, his eyes a swirling amber. His eyes are normally brown, Eric gasped, eliciting a glance from Herbert. The Baron said, You're going to need some help. Do you choose Herbert or Caldus? Does that mean more than it sounds? Eric thought frantically. It is Herb's mission, so maybe I should keep things simple. Eric tapped his leg and said, It would make sense to ask Herbert to help, as he has the Dominion's knowledge about this issue. The Baron smiled and said, Excellent. He stood and walked to the window, where he swayed and caught himself on the sill. Sir, are you all right? Eric asked, ready to spring to help if it was needed. The Baron shook his head and turned to them, his eyes back to their normal brown. Yes, I stood too quickly is all. Eric nodded. That was all very strange. I hope he's all right. The Baron cleared his throat and continued. The weather looks good, so I suggest you head off immediately to make best use of the light. The pair rejoined the road Eric had just left, although walking northeast away from the Weirdwood, where the surface soon became potholed and rough. Before long the road had shrunk to a stony pathway, barely wide enough for them to walk side by side. Are you sure it's in Gribblebog? Eric asked, dreading the pungent scent of the place already. Queen Diana did some sort of tracking spell and said it was over here, so it seems like a good place to start. Eric nodded and said, All right, we should trust that, I suppose. Have you spent much time with the Queen over the past few months then? Yes, a bit. The fairies seemed quite excited to see me. So I've been talking a lot with Freya, Belladonna, and a few others about what went on with... Herbert gestured at his body. How about the goblins? How did they react? Herbert laughed. They were confused for a while, but don't seem to care now. I think they're mostly jealous that I can fly. Herbert has been around the Queen. Maybe he knows something I don't about what's happening in Tauber. Eric pursed his lips and eventually asked, Were you at the Macburg Council meeting 2 months ago? Was that the one where Queen Diana and Goblin King Cuthbert disappeared? And the Baron. Ah, yes, I wasn't there, but I had heard rumors. What happened? Eric chewed the inside of his cheek, but decided to speak openly. The core members of the council have been meeting regularly to discuss everything that happened with the eclipse and the Eldritch.
Have the Eldritch been seen since, by the way?
Herbert scowled in thought. No, our group was the last to see them, although Gertrude said the tower has been rebuilt and there is some sign of life. No one has dealt with them for a while. A lot of people have gathered moonstones and want paying, Herbert laughed. Anyway, what were you saying about when all the lot were taken? Me and the other attendants were waiting outside their rooms, ready to escort them to the council chamber. Only none of them appeared. I went looking for the Baron and found his bed empty. I told Gotchgut and he stomped to the Dominion's rooms to rip someone's head off and found all of them in the same position.
Oh, intriguing. Any sign of what happened?
Nothing. Queen Diana's guards, Wasp and Vespa, were missing too. They showed up a few hours later with lumps on their heads the size of apples, with no memory of why they were outside or what was going on. Eric thought back to their dazed expressions and the panicked fluttering of their wings. Herbert whistled.
How strange. What happened next?
We were all on the edge for 2 days. You could have cut the tension with a butter knife. Then the 3 of them strode out of the council chamber like nothing had happened. We hadn't even seen them go inside. When we asked, they say they were on council business and had been somewhere secret. Then we came home.
I heard a rumor that the Lesherwold were to blame.
Eric gulped.
The Lesherwold?
Herbert whispered.
The witches.
Eric shuddered. After moments of silence, Herbert asked, "What happened next?" Not much. They talked about the librarian's latest findings on whatever it is she's researching. They all looked tired and stressed when they left. And the Baron? Eric glanced at Herbert, wondering if he had said too much after all. Herbert eyed his friend.
Go on.
Eric sighed and said, "The Baron kept giving me really odd looks the whole way home." Herbert pursed his lips.
Odd like how?
I don't know. He just kept staring. Then, when we got back to Fanceydale, he stepped up my training. Even sent me to Sir Poppycock's estate to train with his soldiers, which is where I've just been. Herbert looked thoughtfully. Maybe it's because of what we saw at the tower? Maybe. Nothing else weird has happened? Eric thought about the strange woman with fox-like amber eyes and the vow she had made to him. No, nothing else. Weird. How was Poppycock's place, anyway? Did you learn a lot? Eric grinned. I did. I learned so much from the soldiers and the knights there. I feel a lot more confident than I did before. Herbert glanced at the wooden hilt at Eric's hip. Do you think you'll be a knight soon? Eric ignored the glance. I hope so. What was so nice about the trip was how they all treated me the same as them. Loads of the people there are estranged from their parents or orphans like me, so we understood each other. I got on really well with a woman who could wrestle even the biggest soldiers. Her father was killed on Scrimbold, and her mother died on a fever on the way to Tauber. So she's like me and didn't know her parents. She was raised in that nunnery in the northwest and was training with Poppycock's men too. Why are you looking at me like that? Herbert was grinning like a madman. Oh, no reason. It's just nice to hear about a friend getting on well with a lady. It wasn't like that, Eric cursed his reddening cheeks. Eric scowled. She would have been more interested in me if I were a foot taller with bigger muscles and possibly even Gertrude. Eric stomped off, feeling Herbert's eyes on his back. Sometimes I wonder if Grub was better company, even if he was weird. Herbert soared over his head and landed on the path in front of him. I'm sorry, Eric. I didn't mean to tease you when I can see it meant a lot to you. He held his hand out. Eric grasped Herbert's arm. Apology accepted. Shall we forage some food on the way? I don't fancy camping in Gribblebog, so it might be best to sleep and rise early. Herb? Yes, Rick? What did you mean yesterday by religious reasons? Eric stepped over a fallen tree branch and trotted to catch up with his friend. After a restless night on the edge of Gribblebog, they had risen with the sun to better see the driest path. After 2 hours walking, they found a small village of giants and trolls called Boggerton. A giant had sold them some warm bread and directed them to the northwest, towards a hermit's home, saying they'd heard some quacking there a few days ago. It had taken another hour to get this far, and they were both tiring. Herbert stopped and drank from the water skin. Religious reasons? Eric followed suit with the water. Something about a duck. Herbert stared at his friend, then looked around them. He quietly flew into the air and completed a small circuit of the boggy trees. He touched down and stared at Eric again. Do you promise to keep this a secret if I tell you? Of course. Eric leaned forwards eagerly. I mean it. This is secret goblin stuff. I could get in trouble. I promise, on my future knighthood. Eric raised his hand. Herbert snorted. His expression flickered with regret immediately. Eric scowled. What was the snort for? Sorry, Rick. I didn't mean that the way it sounded. I'm just tired, Herbert sighed. You're my friend, Herb, so I hope you tell me the truth. Well, I reckon you could be a knight now, but the Commonwealth... Herbert trailed off and drank again. The Commonwealth what? They don't see your true potential. Even if I was Grub, I could see it. Or if they do see it, then they're keeping you as a squire for their own greedy reasons. Fancyhead is probably the most selfish person on Tauber, so I wouldn't put it past him to keep you down for no good reason. Eric sipped from his water skin to hide the discomfort on his face. A pang of pain twisted his insides as his friend's words wrangled a long-established fear. Oh, I'm sorry, Eric. It's true, though. Diana might have gone about it a strange way, but she knows your true worth if... Herbert folded his lips and looked away. If what? Eric watched his friend carefully. If you were to join the Dominion, you'd be a knight immediately. Probably a noble, too. I don't want to join the Dominion nobles, though. They're the bad guys. Good and bad aren't as clear-cut as the Commonwealth has taught you. Surely what happened a few months ago showed you that. The image of the Duchess flashed into Eric's mind, and he thought, she is very powerful, and I reckon she's beautiful under that mask. Being her champion might be exactly what I need. Eric looked away from Herbert to hide his blush, his insides wriggling with discomfort and forbidden interest. Softly, Herbert continued. The Commonwealth has clouded your brain with some strange notions. The Dominion is a lot freer with ideas and opinions. Besides, you could join the Fae or the Goblin Court. We'd both look after you. They unnerve me a bit too. Or is that excitement I'm feeling instead? Eric gulped some water to hide his betraying thoughts. Just think about it. You could be a fairy lord, a noble champion, or a goblin chief. By my wings, if you like water, then you could even be a pirate. And you could be taught magic, Rick. Herbert's hand glowed with a soft purple light, and he reached down to touch Eric's wooden sword. The light seeped into the wood, leaving wisps of smoky indigo magic behind. What did you do? Eric asked eagerly. I've enchanted your sword, so you'll have more luck with it than you do now. Eric looked at it closely and thought, that sounds pretty good. Keep in mind the Dominion could teach you that spell really easily. Then we could teach you how to fly. Eric chewed the inside of his cheek. Flying sounds fun, but I like being human. You don't have to do what I did and change your entire body. There are other ways to fly. Eric chewed his cheek, thinking, and if I were with the Dominion humans, I definitely wouldn't have to change myself. Herbert sighed. Just think about it. You deserve to be a knight, and I'd like my friend to fight by my side in whatever is coming. There have been reports of things crawling around dark places. What if the Elwitch did something a few months ago? Woke up something that they cannot control? Eric looked at his friend's worried face. All right, I think about the Dominion. I promise. In exchange for one thing. What? Tell me about the duck. They could smell the giant's hovel long before they could see it. Quietly, they moved up and watched him, sleeping in the afternoon sun. It was warm for mid-autumn, so he was spread out on a large stone, legs carefully folded, but arms sprawled above his head. They stood silently and heard faint quacking from inside the hut. What do you reckon we should do? Herbert whispered. Eric glanced at his friend and stared at his unusual amber eyes. I think we go with Dominion tactics. Let's keep moving and keep hitting him to sap his energy. Then we grab the duck and run. The amber eyes twinkled, then were replaced by Herbert's normal slit irises. Sounds good to me. You go that way, I'll go this way, and we start our attack when you see vines crawl all over him. Eric nodded and scuttled further to the right as Herbert circled to the left. In the moments of stillness, Eric thought about what his friend had said. Maybe the Dominion would be a good choice for me. I like the way they fight, and they probably would make me a knight right away. Maybe even a noble if I joined up with the humans.
I never dreamt of that. And Herb's right. It would be nice to fight alongside a true friend. Maybe even fly alongside him too. Green vines tangled over the rock and giant, cracking and popping as they grew at a great speed. Eric launched himself from his hiding place, running full pelt towards the giant that was only just waking. With a bellow, the giant pushed himself off the rock, snapping the vines beneath his great bulk. He placed a knobbly foot on the muddy ground as Eric reached him and dealt a painful welt to his shin. The giant squealed once, then twice as Herbert's wicked-looking sequiturs opened a long cut across the giant's face. The giant's warm breath reached Eric a footstep later. It smelled like chicken bones left in the sun too long, then blended inside water that had been used to boil cabbage. Eric gagged and pushed ahead. His breath is terrible. I'm sure my hair's on fire from that stench. Eric made it to the hut and ran around the back, listening to the giant bellow and breaking free of the vine ropes Herbert had created. Magic is fun, Eric thought, his grin fierce as he panted. Rounding the corner, he sprinted for the giant. I really wish I had more than this stupid wooden sword. Purple magic glittered over the wood, and Eric laughed gleefully, his eyes set on the giant's back. He raised his sword high and used the rock to spring up towards the giant. Indigo magic flared, and his sword bit through the giant's leather jerkin, tearing a long cut from shoulder to hip that ripped a scream from the giant. Eric landed with a huffed breath and sprinted for the trees, where he started his mad dash. Waving, Herbert streaked past him. There was a thump of magical impact, and the giant bellowed his rage. The breath hit Eric again, making him sway as he ran. He gasped in air, trying to clear the stench, while heavy footsteps pounded the ground behind him. In horror, Eric felt his legs stiffen with tiredness. Please, move faster. Please, move faster. Fingers as thick as piglets grasped the back of his jerkin and lifted him into the air, his tired legs hanging limply beneath him. Behind Eric, the giant rumbled a laugh, his rotten breath clouding around Eric's woozy head.
Who's this, then? Waking old Durgan from asleep?
Eric squeezed, his watering eyes closed against a fetid breath. Ripped into, swallowed, or gingivitis to death. I don't know which is worse. A crack behind him made Eric crane around, trying to see what was making the giant wail. Then the fingers let go, sending Eric plummeting to the ground 15 feet below. Gotcha! Herbert cried, swooping down and grabbing Eric's waist before he could hit the mud. Yes! Eric laughed, tucking his arms against his chest and lifting his legs out straight behind to help Herbert's flight. Herbert banged hard at a tree line, sending them back towards the shouting giant that looked tired but fierce, dark blood dripping off his chin. Herbert shouted an incantation, and more vines wrapped around the giant's legs, sending him sprawling into the mud with a whoosh of putrid breath. The Phelan soared over the giant, through an open window and into the hut. He banged hard towards a rickety table where a rusty cage held a duck nestled among 4 large golden eggs. "Ready, Rick?" "Ready," Eric said with determination, arms outstretched towards the cage. Herbert grazed the top of the cage and Eric grabbed the cold metal, clutching it against his chest. The duck quacked unhappily and flapped her wings. Then they were out of another window, over the giant and back into the tree line. The giant bellowed behind them, still thrashing in the mud, trying to break free. Eric howled with pure joy, bare branches whipping around them as they soared. The fox watched the fallen human and duck fly through the trees. Her eyes sparkled, and one of the golden eggs disappeared from the cage, materializing in front of her. Scents of old money and freedom tickled her nose. One path is open to you, Eric of the Dominion. I wonder if the others will be as compelling. Gently, she picked up the egg in her mouth and trotted through the trees, ignoring the angry yells of a giant set on vengeance. Breaking Free. Ich streich das auf More. Künstlerische Freiheit. Eric wheezed, his wavering eyes closed. Achso, genau. Wir wollten es ein zweites Mal machen. Ich war so drin. Ich war so im Moment.